Good evening.
Good evening.
I hereby call this January the 8th meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. I was a few months behind. As always, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in and for being here today. I'd like to take a moment and just recognize all of our staff here today for the hard work that they do in our community, starting with the city manager, Mr. Lee Garrity. We have all the city manager's staff, the assistant city managers with us today. We have our city attorney, Attorney Carmen, Attorney Sykes is usually here, and I believe she's here again today. With our police department, we have Chief Thompson. Chief Mayo is not here with our fire department today. He does send his regards. So with us today, we have Battalion Chief Kosterka. Mr. Sadler was not able to be here today because he passed away on last Thursday. Mr. Sadler served this city with distinction, with honor, and there's a question that I took from the Mayor Pro Temp. We always asked him, was the city prepared? And every day he came into this committee, the answer was yes. He worked very, very diligently to make sure we're prepared in the event of a natural disaster or an emergency. And would you all please join me with a moment of silence on his behalf? Let us all continue to keep the family of Mel Sadler in our prayers.
Mr. Chairman, could somebody
Mayor Pro Temp Burke.
when is the funeral going to be?
Good afternoon. The service for Mr. Sadler is Wednesday, the 10th of January at noon at Wake Chapel. There will be a viewing from 10:30 to 11:30 at Davis Chapel, which is right there on Wake Forest campus as well. But it's this Wednesday.
And we do encourage all the staff and all the citizens of this city to come by and show their regards for Mr. Sadler. Moving on to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are approved with one sweeping motion, unless a member of this council or this committee wishes to be pulled for consideration. There are two items on the consent agenda. Members of the committee, are there any items that should be pulled for consideration at this time? If there are none, I would entertain a motion. It's been motioned and properly seconded. All in favor of approval of consent agenda, please vote yes. Opposers, no. The consent agenda is approved unanimously. Moving to the general agenda, we have three items on the general agenda. We have a need, members of the committee and the council, to pull items G2 and items G3 to possibly have a discussion at our February meeting. So without concern, we will move those to February, and then that leaves one item on our agenda, and that's item G1. If you'd read it, please.
Item G1, report on successful outcomes after release program.
Starting us off with the report is Mr. Raleigh. Mr. Raleigh, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman Taylor. Good evening to the members of the committee. The item before you is our annual report on the successful outcomes after release program, and it's a pleasure to be able to be here to present this report to you this evening. The report is in your packet. It's 20 pages. I will not go through each page. I will try to provide a summary of the information, but before I do that, just want to recognize a few members of staff that really did the legwork in piecing this report together, and then also in administering the program throughout the year. Starting with Ms. Pam Peoples-Joyner of the Police Department, Ms. Regina Ford Hall, Mr. Troy Sneed, and Ms. Faith Bartlett are not here, but they also have a big hand in administering the work experience component of the program. And thanks to Mr. Rao for doing the legwork of pulling together the report that's included in your items. Before I delve into the report, I just kind of want to give the committee a brief reminder on this program and how it came to be. So back in the 2014-15 fiscal year, the mayor and city council elected to establish the program that would become known as SOAR. And they did that using $100,000 allocations from general fund. And that funding was split 50-50 between the work experience component of the program and the grantee agency piece of the program. The vision was to not only directly employ folks who were returning to the community from incarceration and provide them opportunities for gainful employment, but to also support the work of agencies in the community that were working with this population. And so we are now, I believe, in our fifth or sixth cohort of participants that have come through the work experience component of the program. We have to date 36 folks who have participated in the program. And of that 36, we can count 26 individuals who have successfully completed the work experience component of the program. And by successful completion, I mean have finished out their terms. It's a 6-month term of temporary employment that they served with the city and gone on to other things. And 2 of those 36 are currently enrolled in the program and comprise the current cohort of individuals in the program. We did do some reaching out to the individuals and have tracked their, to the extent that we can, their successes after they have graduated from the program. And I'm happy to report that 17 of the 26 individuals that graduated from the program have gone on to hold either full or part-time positions either within the city or in other organizations, which is a pretty fantastic stat. And I can say I think 13 of those 17 either are currently employed by the city or were previously employed by the city but have used the city, frankly, for what we hope many of them will is a launch point to other opportunities. I'll turn for a minute to the grantee agency portion of the program. The initial funding of $50,000 that was allocated in the 14-15 fiscal year went to support 6 agencies at the time. And the pool of agencies that now is the recipient of SOAR funds or works with this particular population of individuals has grown to 13 agencies over the course of the last 4 fiscal years. There is one thing I'd like to note about the grantee agencies, and that was that in the 16-17 fiscal year, Council authorized what we've called the seed funding pool of funds available. And the idea was to provide what we call seed funding to agencies that may not have the governance structure or be equipped, if you will, to compete with some of the larger, more established agencies in the grantee agency pool. And so we have identified there are 5 agencies that are currently funded through that seed funding pool. And one of the stipulations of receipt of the seed funding, which was $5,000 for each agency, was that they submitted to participate in a series of 4 workshops that Ms. Peoples-Joyner administered, and those workshops were, again, designed to strengthen their management and organizational capacities. And the programs, if you will, or the workshops focused on everything from governance to fund development, program evaluation, and budget and finance. Again, with the hope that over time, with the seed funding, with the additional support, that they would become capable agencies that could eventually compete with the more firmly established agencies over time. And all 5 of those agencies did successfully complete those workshops. And there is a large kind of stack of appendices in the report. Those really speak to the performance of each agency, the numbers that they have reported for number of participants served and other things. And I think what you'll see in looking at that is that the reach of this particular program, beyond just the individuals that the city has employed, does ripple out pretty significantly when you look at the number of participants that the grantee agencies that the city is funding has served or have served. So the final portion of the report, there are some recommendations that as we got together, we see and wanted to put forward. And I'll focus on just a few. I think there's 6 or 7, but I'll just highlight a couple of the recommendations for really ways to enhance the program. The first is we really identified that there was an opportunity to continue to add new departments to the program. We have some very firmly established relationships with many departments that host SOAR participants now, from the Community Development Department, Recreation and Parks, Property and Facilities Management, Cemeteries, and other. But we do recognize that there's some other departments that would certainly gain value and I think would be willing participants if asked to host some of our future SOAR participants. Secondly, we wanted to seek out ways to enhance the coaching and mentorship element of the program. That's something that we have definitely strengthened since the program's inception back in 2014. But again, we're always looking for new ways to enhance the support that we can provide to the participants that are going through the work experience component of the program. Thirdly, we want to continue to find ways to enhance the promotion and the visibility of the program, not just for the work experience component, but also for the grantee agency side of the program. And lastly, we want to continue to work with the SOAR grantee agencies to help them to develop their capacity. That's our first step, was certainly the provision of the seed funding, but we want to continue to help them to develop those outcomes and performance-based measures as we go forward. So with that, I will stop, and I will just note that if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but Ms. Ford Hall and Ms. Peoples-Joyner are also available to answer questions if you have any.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Well, before we move to questions, I just want to add that, I appreciate your report. It was a great report. We didn't go over all 20 pages, but it was a good summary. This program certainly makes a difference in the lives of people of this community, from those who participate on the grantee agency side to those who want to feed their families and provide for themselves in this community. So this program certainly helps us to fight poverty. It certainly helps us to reduce recidivism, and this is a program that's near and dear to my heart, and I thank the council for supporting this program and for your continued support. Mr. Riley, we appreciate you, and if I start calling names, you know how we do, but I do want to take a moment and thank Ms. Faith Bartlett. I want to thank Mr. Troy Sneed, and those who are here today. On my left, Ms. Peoples-Joyner. Some of the work that you do goes unnoticed, and it doesn't get advertised a lot, but I appreciate what you do for this community and for this program. Ms. Regina Ford Hall, thank you for your leadership on this program as well. You truly, on a daily basis, make a difference in the lives of those who participate in this program. So thank you to all, and I will open up now this committee to any questions about SOAR or comments. Councilmember Larson.
I'm particularly interested in the outside agencies that we're funding, which is about 50% of the total budget. And I think it's, 13, 14 different agencies. Are there any, are we seeing an increased demand from different agencies? Are we, how competitive are these grants? Are the agencies that we have not funded that have asked for funding and we do not have the money to fund them? Or how is that block of money being distributed?
Mr. Rao may be able to speak to that better than I, but from what I know, in looking at the agencies that have been funded, certainly there are others out there that have not received funding, that have submitted applications.
Have not applied.
And that is true of all the grantee agencies, whether they're part of the SOAR process or I'll just call it the general grantee agency process. Every year, the city council, I think, sees the requests for funding far outstrip the amount of funding that's available.
Well, the question is, what I'm trying to get to, have we rejected applications, or are we funding at this point all applications that have come in?
That I could get back to you on that.
I'd just be curious to know, and obviously the question will be is, are we going to see more demand in this category? And right now it's approximately a 50-50 split. But that seems to be a growth area, particularly potentially for us.
And Mr. Larson, I'll add that we tend to fund just about everyone who applies. I think the goal for the grantee agency portion of the program was to fund those who historically hadn't been given the opportunity to come to the table for funding. And so I think we don't want to continue to fund the same agencies every single year, and we do want to, it's a matter of supply and demand. So to answer what I think you're asking, we could always use more support in the form of funding and support there. So I hope you continue to do that. And we will continue to look for other agencies who have applied, who have not been selected to participate. So we don't want the same people at the table every single time. We'll keep the door revolving. Councilmember Bessie.
Thank you. Mr. Raleigh, I see the recommendations on page 10. You've got 6 of them. This first one is use the city's temporary agency for all SOAR hiring to provide flexibility in selecting and managing program participants. So when you say SOAR hiring, I assume you mean selecting the people who have applied to enter the
Yes.
program? How's it done now, and why do you think this would be a better method?
Well, at the present moment, we hire the participants for the program and bring them on essentially as what we call city temps. So that is not bringing them through our temporary staffing agency, which is something that we previously did. And unfortunately, when we have challenges with participants, granted that's not often, but when we do, in those unfortunate circumstances, the fact that they have been brought in not as a city temp and as a city, or have been brought in as a city temp can make it difficult for us to make necessary changes to staffing when those situations arise, which can create some challenges for supervision in those particular cases.
If you have a recommendation, then we can.
I don't. I just was sorting through that. That was like a very diplomatic way to describe an issue. I may want to talk to you later.
Sure.
Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
I want to thank the people who work with the program because I know it is really difficult. And when you're trying to provide housing for them and they come with nothing, and to even save a few of them. And looking at the economy as it is today, we do talk about the minimum wage being a certain amount, but some people are still not getting that minimum wage. And I was thinking when I looked at some of this here, when a client first comes to you, I'm going to ask Ms. Pam Peoples-Joyner that because I believe she talks to me more about this situation. Just tell us about it. For instance, here's this homeless person, ex-offender, coming to you. How do they even get to you? How do you get involved with them?
Well, as former executive director of the Darrell Hunt Project for Freedom and Justice, people still know in the community that I help people. That's how they get to me. I also often get individuals referred from officers at the Winston-Salem Police Department. I'll just give an example. John Doe will come in my office. He'll tell me his situation. I'll look at all of the SOAR grantee agencies to determine which agency will be able to assist that individual. I never allow an individual to leave my office if they're hungry. I always have enough to get them a Happy Meal or something like that. We have a partnership with the rescue mission. We'll get them clothes and we'll get them food. We have even gone as far as assisting people that's not in the city with the bus pass to get back home if we didn't have resources in the city. So on behalf of all the SOAR agencies, I really want to thank the city for providing funding to assist the individuals in this community.
May I just
Mayor
continue?
Pro Tem.
For instance, when a person is an ex-offender, we know they don't have any money in their pocket.
That's
very
correct.
little. And when people hire people to work, they say you need to have a place to stay. So to get places for them to stay, what places do they actually stay until they can finally get into a room or a suite or a house?
We partner with the Bethesda Center and the Rescue Mission and Samaritan Ministries, and they allow SOAR participants to sometimes be first on the list. If not, we refer individuals to Harold Smith with the Eureka House. He has a partnership with the landlords in the city that house ex-offenders.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I do commend you for pushing hard for us to have this program. And as I told you, we all had some interest in ex-offenders, and you just took an old something and gave it a new twist. And
Thank
I
you for
think
your
that's
support.
very good. But I think if we can just save one person, get them employed. For instance, we spend a lot of our tax dollars when companies come, but we don't have trained people to even fill those jobs. And I can see this may be one way that we can see people who could be future, that is if these companies will hire ex-offenders. And I think when we're talking about it, they need to understand when we give them some of our dollars that they need to be willing to hire some of the ex-offenders, because these jobs they're doing, it seems it's good to us, but they're hardly making a living, and they have families. So we're going to have to get them in jobs that will pay them the kinds of salaries so they can survive.
And Mayor Pro Tem Burke, I just want to add, as you're aware from finance, I believe Bunzel was on the agenda, and I think that did pass finance, and they will be committed to hiring former offenders when they look to hire. So that's one company who is recently coming to our community who is committed. And also, we recently passed an initiative called Ban the Box with the support of those from the chamber and others from this community that sort of removes the requirement to check whether you have a felony or misdemeanor with the city of Winston-Salem and allows them to get to the interview process. Now, they still are evaluated, but based on their merits and not necessarily their mistakes, as I always say. So we encourage others through our actions, such as the chamber and other businesses in the community, to support exactly what you've just described.
Mayor Pro Tem, I spoke with Chantel Robinson, who's the Forsyth County Human Resources Director, on Monday. She emailed me and assured me that Forsyth County will hire ex-offenders. It's on a case-by-case basis, and she actually added SOAR referral to the Forsyth County website so I can track the individuals who referred from the SOAR program. So Forsyth County is officially a partner.
Thank you, Ms. Peoples-Joyner. If I may, Mr. Bessie, if you can hold for one moment. Ms. Peoples-Joyner, if you will sit tight. Mr. McIntosh has been waiting patiently. You have the floor, sir.
Sure. I just wanted to say I really like the structure of the seed funding within the grantee agency funding program. To me, it very much resembles sort of the private sector entrepreneur startup concept. And I think what a lot of these great ideas need is a little bit of money and a little bit of capacity building. And who knows what the next home run is going to be coming out of this arena. And I just think it's important that we give some of these thoughts and some of these methods an opportunity to either flourish or change or go away. And I think that's particularly effective, and I'm happy to see that it's working.
Appreciate your comments. Councilmember Bessie.
Yes. Thank you. I just had time to kind of sort through my thoughts on the question I asked Mr. Raleigh, and Ms. Peoples-Joyner may actually be the right one to respond to this follow-up inquiry. You know, in terms of the hiring process in the context that Mr. Raleigh had referenced, I can see several different elements. I mean, there's application and initial selection, screening, the formal paperwork, and then supervision, actually, of the on-the-job work. Can you tell me which ones of those would, under this recommendation, which ones of those would stay in-house and which ones would actually be handled through our contract temp agency?
Mr. Raleigh.
Councilmember Bessie, if I may, I was actually reminded by Ms. Caruth about specifically what we were trying to address with this particular recommendation that may help clarify. What I cited earlier was certainly, I'd call it a very minor consideration, but the primary reason that we put this forward was when we hire individuals through our temporary staffing agency, should we separate from them? I mean, it could be not necessarily a negative situation, but positive as well. By virtue of their connection through that temporary staffing agency, it makes them available for other opportunities that staffing agency is connected with. So they've already kind of been screened by that staffing agency, which then allows them at the conclusion of their 6-month term here, you know, they're not necessarily able to land a full-time position with us. The temporary staffing agency could then move them very quickly to another hiring agency, and that's the hope that we see for folks that successfully complete the program.
Under this proposed change, will our in-house staff still be handling the initial application and selection?
Yes. So the only piece that would not be handled is, well, our temporary staffing agency does the background screening, the drug screening, and all those sort of things. The actual review of the applications would remain in-house. All the selection would remain in-house, and the assignment would remain in-house.
Okay. And the actual on-the-job supervision?
And on-the-job supervision absolutely would remain in-house as well.
I think I understand what you're talking about. Thank you.
Sure.
I just wanted to, Chairman, if I could take 2 seconds. Mr. Raleigh mentioned the 17 participants who have successfully completed and secured employment, which is a 65% rate. 65% is really phenomenal in this business. I mean, what staff has done is just amazing. And this is some of the hardest folks to place, and it's making a big difference. And I want to thank all of them for what they're doing.
To put it in perspective, if a baseball player batted 65%, they'd be in consideration for the MVP.
Yes.
pretty good.
Unanimous.
Chairman Taylor, I will also
Raleigh.
note about that 65% that was just those that we were able to confirm. So in truth, we may have some others out there who we have lost contact with over the years that also are doing well post the program.
Councilman Larson.
Could I ask a sort of a logistical question, and that is, this is, I think, a very exciting and a program that can grow in a number of ways, and I applaud the chairman and the council for putting it together. And I guess one of my questions is does this city have the capability of receiving donations targeted specifically to this project?
We do. We haven't solicited, but we do.
But, I mean, part of it is whether the public's even aware specifically of how impactful this is, not only to the granting agencies, which certainly have their own constituencies and following, but the fact that this it targets a specific audience, and it's been extremely helpful for the city as a whole, I think. But I wonder if it's well enough known, and I do wonder if there's not some private individuals out there and other agencies that are willing to maybe even enhance it to give us a little more flexibility to grow it.
Councilmember Larson, I would like to add that the Winston-Salem Police Foundation funded Carver High School $3,000 to enhance the SOAR program. They have a program called the Millennium Scholars Program, and it's for at-risk males at Carver High School.
A good example. Good example. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
Yes, and when we look at, I was thinking, do you have anyone that could even write for grants to share this program and maybe be provided through some national group that funds programs like this? I think that would be good. And Councilmember Larson, you bring up a good point. There are some people, if they don't know, they won't know. But if you can appeal to some of the people in the public, you know, this is the time, end of the year, people with money, they're trying to make sure that Mr. Uncle Sam or I won't get it all, that they give it to somebody.
I think we got the newspaper here.
Oh, the newspaper's here? Oh, my.
We got some newspaper men here.
I think they all left.
Oh, we got Mr. Todd Luck here.
Okay.
Hide behind it.
You're on Front Street, Mr. Luck. Hello. Have you finished your comments, Mayor Pro Tem Burke?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peoples-Joyner. Mr. Raleigh, have you finished your presentation?
Yes, sir.
Are there any other comments that should be considered on SOAR or any questions at this time? Are there any other comments for the good of the order? Our general agenda has been completed. Seeing there's nothing further, we consider this Public Safety Committee meeting to be adjourned. Thank you.